I remember back in Call of Duty World at War when we were initially introduced to Call of Duty Zombies, one of the biggest complaints was that on Noctur on Toten, the zombies would take forever to spawn in. The first 10 rounds were brutally slow and painful to get through because of that, and while that might seem like a small and simple issue, it's one of those things that Treyarch has kind of been trying to remedy for a very long time, and it's this idea that the first 10 rounds are somewhat of a chore to get through and that some of the casual players just want to get to that midpoint and the climax of the game as fast as possible. They just want to get to the fun part without having to wait for all the zombies to spawn in so they can begin the subjectively tedious process of collecting points and getting set up for the later rounds. Now, there have been a lot of attempts to solve this problem, but I think by far there were 2 times where Treyarch got very close to completely getting rid of that problem. The first instance was in Gorod Krovi in Black Ops 3. In that map, if you want to open up Pack-a-Punch, you have to summon these Groff modules, and basically you just have to protect them from the zombies, and while that's happening, the zombies spawn in non-stop, and the game basically skips that little break in between the rounds, so you can go through 2 or 3 rounds very quickly while doing these Groff modules, and to me, that really helped speed up the process of collecting points and getting set up, and that's the closest we got to solving this problem in a normal zombies map, and the reason why is because Treyarch just didn't really want to change how normal zombies was played. They wanted to preserve that formula so badly that they kind of refrained from changing the pacing of the normal zombies game mode. So in Black Ops 4, they decided that, you know what? If the casual players just want to get to killing zombies right away, then how about we just make an entirely different game mode just for that? So they did. It was called Zombie Rush, and had it not been included in such an unpopular game like Black Ops 4, I think it could have been really successful. It was fast-paced, it was fun, and overall it was very much action-packed. And it had a lot of potential. There were other attempts as well. For example, in Shadows of Evil, you can just shoot the Shadow Man in the very beginning of the game, and every time you shoot him, you skip 5 rounds up until round 15, and it didn't quite work because you were just skipping the rounds, and doing the rituals on round 15 wasn't exactly an experience most people would claim to be fun. So as far as solid attempts go, those 2 I would consider to be the best ones. And that brings us to Cold War Zombies. And Cold War Zombies as a whole is one of those games that you look at and you can tell the developers are not shying away from giving the player a lot of options. Before, Treyarch was very hesitant when it came to giving the player a lot of choices, and I think that stems from this idea that if the player has too many choices, then that takes away from the challenge and it makes the game too easy. In Cold War Zombies, even though they still somewhat hold back when it comes to giving the player a lot of freedom, when you compare it to the previous titles, it gives you the most amount of freedom we've gotten so far, and the most amount of choices as well, and the devs were the least hesitant to try new things. And one of the things that they tried was doing the unthinkable, which is messing with the pacing of zombies. For the first time ever, in order to mitigate the issue of the tediousness of the first 10 rounds, Treyarch has introduced the Rampage Inducer. And basically what this thing is that it's just an orange canister that's located inside the first room of every map. You can go up to it, hold square, and activate it. And that's gonna make it so that the zombies are gonna become super sprinters. And the little gap between the rounds is going to be skipped. So it pretty much allows you to burn through the rounds as fast as possible. It can only stay activated until round 20. If you're playing in co-op, everybody has to vote on whether you want to activate it or not, and once you do, you can deactivate it anytime you want, which again, everybody would have to vote on. It's a really simple thing. There's not much else to it. It's a simple trade-off. You get to burn through the rounds a lot faster, but in exchange for that, you risk going down because the zombies are much faster and so much more aggressive than they normally would be. In my first few attempts, I went down a few times, not just because I suck and I need to get good, but because I simply just underestimated how fast the zombies were going to come at me. And it kind of caught me off guard. But once I familiarized myself with it, I was able to utilize it correctly. So the question is, how useful is the Rampage Inducer? Well, considering the fact that it pretty much solves a problem that Treyarch has been struggling with for a very long time, I would say that it's pretty useful. It's just a thing that allows you to sacrifice difficulty for time. and I think that's a fair trade-off. The one thing I was worried about is if once you activated it, you would be stuck with it until round 20, but thankfully that's not the case, and you can just deactivate it anytime you want. You can just turn it on and get to like round 5 or 6 when you have enough points to open up Pack-a-Punch, and then you can turn it off, open up Pack-a-Punch, and do the rest of your setup, and then you can turn it back on again to get to round 20 as fast as possible. Or at least that's how I've been playing the game. You don't get any additional XP for doing this. As a matter of fact, I think you might actually be getting less XP than you normally would, but that's more of a suspicion than anything else. It is great for doing your camo challenges. I know that process can be very tiresome, and the Rampage Inducer definitely helps shorten the length of that process. You do get exactly the same number of points as you would normally, which is great. You might miss more headshots though, because the zombies are so much faster and you might not be able to land the perfect headshot every single time. But overall, it's definitely a welcomed addition to the game, and I really hope that it sticks around. I hope it's not a temporary thing, because at the end of the day, even though giving the player more options could result in the game becoming too easy, I think the probability of it making the game more fun is much higher. More choices and more freedom add more fun to the gameplay than the challenge that is taken away from the gameplay. I think the Rampage Inducer is a great little feature that everyone is going to find useful, and I hope to see more things like it in zombies in the future. Good job, Treyarch, you nailed it this time. That is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments section down below what you think of the Rampage Inducer. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.